Right, so I am, unlike Lori and Mary, I am not an analyst. I am a crass capitalist who is trying to build a business. So I'm going to try not to be too salesy. I will say that our capitalism is embedded in a real passion about solving what I believe is both a heartbreaking and a growing problem within our country, which is that we've just got a lot of old people who don't have choices about how to live safely, and as a result, they're scared, they're lonely, they're isolated, and they are under increasing financial duress. So that's really what our company is about. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of where we see the state of the industry or the state of the population and what we think the problem is. And this is less focused on how seniors use technology for themselves, but more how technology can help solve problems in senior housing, senior care, and independent living. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then also to share a couple of stories about my senior focus group of one, which is my 83-year-old mother. Feel free to ask questions as I go. So as we look at what we believe are the challenges facing older Americans, and these are, by the way, challenges that face all Americans because older Americans are such a big part of our population. A lot of this is data that I think Lori will probably touch on as well, but about 40 million Americans are over the age of 65. About 10 million of them live alone. So that means, not in an independent living facility, but alone in a freestanding house. It's the fastest growing demographic in the United States. And according to the AARP, 90% of seniors want to live in their own home for as long as possible. So that's what people really want to do. And what we see is that the existing, sort of solutions for senior housing are insufficient. So senior living facilities are unaffordable to many people. They're certainly a stretch for anyone, except for that top 1%. But the latest statistic out of the National Council on Aging is that 25% of women over the age of 80 live in poverty. So they're not going to be writing a check to the tune of $50,000 a year to live in a Sunrise facility and be safe and socialized and take the bus to the ball game. The sort of typical safety device that's put in the home is the panic button, the I've fallen and I can't get up button. That technology was developed in the early 70s. It's 40 years old. Lori doesn't like this study, but we use it because we think it's important. A study done in England showed that in 80% of accidents, seniors did not press their emergency button. Either they weren't wearing it, they had lost consciousness, or they just didn't think the situation they were in was severe enough to warrant a 911 call.
You're going to have to get...
I don't want to install...
Change that to our...
Okay. So the emergency buttons are problematic. And again, sharing my focus group of one, I said to my 83-year-old mother, who's living alone for the first time in her life, would you ever wear one of those buttons? And she said, I'd wear it when you were looking. And I appreciated the honesty. She said all of her friends have them. They all leave them in the front hall chest. When their kids come over, they put them on. As soon as the door closes, they take them off, put them back in the chest, and they don't put them on again. The other thing my mother said is, I would rather die of starvation and dehydration in my bathroom than have some man with tattoos break down my front door at 11 o'clock at night and take me out on a stretcher in my underwear. So the thing you got to remember is when you press that button, an ambulance is coming to your house, they're going to break down your door, they're going to take you away, your door is going to be left open. That's a problem in January in Boston, your pipes will freeze if there's anything left in your house when you come back. So things have to be pretty bad for you to press that button. My mother is, the other thing that I will share with you that I believe is that the Depression generation is very independent, very I can do it myself, but they have an uncanny ability to see the worst case scenario in the greatest level of detail imaginable. So all of those scenarios come from my mother. The other piece of data we see is that about 3 million falls go undetected each year. A study done in San Francisco of seniors found helpless in their home showed that 60% had spent 12 hours or more on the floor. 88% of those people were hospitalized, 70% for more than 2 weeks. And that basically with our existing systems, there's very little opportunity or effort toward holistic health, proactive health management, forward-looking problem abatement. So that's really the problem that we're trying to solve. And we believe that technology can help with that. So we believe there's an opportunity for a more comprehensive safety net. Technology can help you really get information about holistic health, our patterns sticking onto the routine, or are they deviating from the routine? Are people eating regular meals? Are they sleeping okay? All of those can have big impact on overall health. Are people taking their medication? We also have found that every person believes that their situation is unique. So systems need to be customizable, they need to be configurable. Every family deals with supporting an aging relative in a different way. We also believe that it's not realistic to ask elderly people to radically change their routine in order to stay safe. So you saw the numbers, only about half of them have broadband. Lori will put up even more sobering numbers about access to technology, comfort with technology. It's probably not realistic to think that an 82-year-old is going to wake up one day and start punching a whole bunch of information into a computer and submitting it into a doctor. Certainly not somebody who's fairly healthy. Ease of use, ease of setup, we think is really important, so that there isn't a huge barrier. Moving into an independent living facility is a big deal. It's a big, 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 big change. Putting some technology in your house that takes 10 minutes to install is not a big deal. And then also we believe that solutions that don't cost what institutional living costs are really critical for us to care for this older generation. So the big issue that we face in offering safety technology is that there's still a stigma attached with anything that indicates that an old person might need additional support or safety. And a lot of what we're trying to do is remove the stigma, and we're working with aging organizations to do it. But bike helmets aren't just for bad bikers, seatbelts aren't just for bad drivers, burglar alarms aren't only for people who live in bad neighborhoods. We have a close friend who died of the flu at age 28. He got a bad case of the flu, lived alone in LA, got up, tripped, fell, hit his head, lost consciousness, was found 2 days later. I have a classmate from business school who died at age 46, lost his footing on the stairs when his family was out of town, hit his head at the bottom of the staircase, and his family found him 2 days later. So these are not concerns that are specific to the elderly. There's just a lack of awareness that very low-level safety systems can be put in place so that you don't undergo undue suffering. So again, my mother, the focus group of one, lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, very healthy, still rides a bike, walks 4 miles a day. One of her closest friends at age 82 rode her bike into town to get the newspaper, rode it home, went upstairs, slipped on a piece of butter in the kitchen, spent 3 days on the floor with a broken hip, and never went home again. So the other thing that we believe is that healthy people may be at the greatest risk because they take the most risks. So my mother weighs 95 pounds and she's up on a ladder probably 3 days a week, changing light bulbs, hanging wallpaper, getting that little thing out of the gutter that needs to come out of the gutter. So she's incredibly healthy, but I think she's at greater risk. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our system and why we designed it the way we did. Basically what we do is we put sensors around the house. Those sensors can passively monitor activity. Many of them are similar to sensors that you'd find in a home security system. So the same ones that you put on your door and the motion sensors you put around the house. They communicate through the cellular network to a data center. So it does not require somebody to have broadband internet access in their home. In fact, people don't even need to have a telephone. Our first customer was a guy in a trailer park in Louisiana who had only a cell phone, a pay-as-you-go cell phone. So people don't need sophisticated communication device in their house, communication infrastructure in their house. And then all of that data is published onto a private web portal where family members can log on, they can check in and see what's going on, and then they can also configure the system to send them notifications if something's out of the ordinary. So one of our customers has picked up a urinary tract infection in her mom. Another one discovered his mom had a fairly bad case of the flu. She's 83. She didn't get out of bed. She was out of bed at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So he gave her a call, and she said, gosh, I feel awful. He went over. She had a fever of 104. So those are the kinds of things that you can find out with a system like this that are really helpful. And I think his mom probably would have gotten very sick. So that's the way our system works. And just to sort of give a little idea of where we think technology can be really helpful, this is a picture of a house, and it sort of tells you what sensors can do and how they can keep families informed. So you can put sensors on exterior doors, see if when people are coming and going. It's helpful to know that somebody's socializing. I like to make sure my mom gets out every day because she tends to keep to herself. see when they're in and out of bed. Those are both very useful for people who are in early stage cognitive decline. You see a lot of cases of people that are getting diagnoses for Alzheimer's and dementia in their early 60s. They're going to live for 20 more years, and memory care facilities range between $40,000 and $90,000 a year. So a lot of people don't have, 60,000 times 20 in their savings bank. So trying to, economize early on is really helpful. We offer phone reminders so that people can be told to take their medication every day. Those can be triggered off a missed medication event. We have a chair sensor that can tell you if they're watching TV or not. We have sensors that we can put on medicine cabinets and medicine boxes to tell you if medication's being taken. And then we have motion sensors that you can place around the house just to make sure people are up in the morning getting breakfast. So with my mom, I just have 2 door sensors, 2 motion sensors, and I know when she's up and around during the day.
Was that negotiated?
Actually, well, this is the most interesting thing, is if you talk to seniors on their own, you discover that they're all really scared. But they don't want to tell their children how scared they are because they're afraid if they do, their children will take them away and send them somewhere they don't want to go. So my mom was delighted that there was something, she didn't have to wear a button, but her big fear was that she'd be like her friend and be stuck on the floor for 3 days. And she doesn't want us to call her every day. Mm-hmm. She really doesn't. So she was actually delighted about this. And it also took a lot of pressure off her because she's not comfortable with technology. So she didn't want to have to be responsible for pressing a button or checking in or doing any of those,
were there types of monitoring that she rejected and said, no, I don't want you to?
She didn't like the bed sensor. She's a terrible sleeper. She has a 50-year-old, mattress that's not very shape. Right, and so, right, exactly. And she just said, I don't want anything in my bed. And I said, fine. But we did talk about how long, so I have a notification to let me know if no one's moved in the house for 2 hours. And we talked about what that time frame should be. So, and it was shocking. My mom is not cooperative on these issues. So, yeah.
Where's the dashboard?
You can just go to our website and you log in.
Okay, so it's a cloud-based dashboard which friend, family can go.
That's right. It's actually not cloud-based. It's in a secure data center. We've not migrated to the cloud yet because we believe our data center is more secure.
And is there eyeballs on this streaming data from all your people that you've sold to recognize, say the family, say you're on vacation in Europe and you have bad internet connection in Albania and you can't log on, is there another set of eyes that you pay to look at the data coming in?
We do not offer monitoring, so we don't watch other people's systems for them. That's kind of a risky endeavor, and we're not a healthcare company. We are working with home care companies who are offering that service to their clients. So they usually have some sort of 24-hour call desk, and they will take notifications after hours. But that's not something we're offering. So what we typically say to families is if you're going on vacation, find somebody else to watch the dashboard while you're gone.
So you need a sub-business of somebody who is going to be the follow-up, but you have not the liability to go down.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. What we found is that most people don't want to be called at 2 o'clock in the morning by a stranger from a central system saying, why aren't you in bed? But if it's their home care company and it is linked to some other aging service that they're in touch with, they take comfort from that.
But in your mother's case, she's independent, so there's no other outside connection. So it's either you, your siblings, or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
Is there a way to have a notification sent to your cell phone or something really?
Yep, cell. Yeah, you can do cell, email, or telephone. But my mother's not a candidate for an independent monitoring system. She would take the phone and throw it out the window and say, get that thing out of my house. So, as I said, every situation's different, and every family has to deal with that in different ways, and every family makes different decisions about how much risk they're willing to take.
Given the resistance to wearing the button, do you see seniors resisting what could be seen as an invasion of privacy, all these little gadgets, keeping an eye on what they're doing? Or do they see that as a better alternative to being moved somewhere else and accept the observation, the monitoring, because that keeps them in the house?
They definitely object to the monitoring. What we have found is that it really depends on how it's presented to them. If it's, hey mom, you're getting old, I'm gonna put some stuff in and monitor you now, typically the conversation doesn't go real well. If the conversation is, I'm scared, you live alone, and every day I call you and feel like I have to cross-examine you to find out whether you're safe, if I put this system in, I'll just know you're up in the morning, I'll know you're safe in bed at night. Can we do that so that I don't worry? And then what we typically hear back from the older person is, I had no idea how worried my kids were about me. Now when they call, we have a pleasant conversation. So yes, there's a lot of resistance, and there will be for a while. There's a lot of resistance to the panic buttons. You know, there's a resistance to change, and I think that's sort of, as we sort of segue back to old people and technology, you know, you've seen the numbers of how far 65 plus is behind the rest of the population. You know, if half of them are no longer, are not yet using broadband, they will be joining the broadband community at a time in their life when it's extremely difficult to learn new things. So it becomes increasingly difficult to get them level set with the rest of society, and I think it's always going to be that way. I think people in their 70s and 80s are always going to have a different view of technology from people in their 20s and 30s. And so where I think there's opportunity for innovation is to meet the 80-year-old on their terms. So I'll end with just one anecdote, which is that I bought my mother one of those WOW computers, which is the computer that's designed for old people. And the 24-year-olds on my staff said, God, I hate that thing. There's so many playful things they could do with icons that they didn't do. And you know, it's so cluttered and everything's an ugly list. And I said, but an ugly list is what they understand. And she likes it because email says email. It doesn't say iConnect. It says email. And she said, if I touch that, will I see my email? And I said, yes. And she touched it, and there was her email. And then she said, I want to get on Facebook. All my friends are on Facebook. I don't understand Facebook. And I said, well, then touch the Facebook link. And she touched the Facebook link, and there she was. So I think that, you know, it's ugly, it's cluttered, it is uncreative, there's nothing playful about it, and she loves it. She absolutely loves it. So that's my sort of parting story on aging technology is, you know, you've got to get into the heads of people that age. You can't turn an 80-year-old into a 20-year-old. It's just not going to happen.
Can this include a panic button? Do you have an option?
Yeah, we
for
do.
that?
We do. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, by the time, though, in 10 years, the dialogue is going to change because boomers are going to demand a different level of, you know, unless you have dementia, there's no way that my generation is going to accept this kind of, unless I was falling apart. But I'm saying that I think that the boomers, when they're 80, like your mother who lives in Cambridge, which is where I spent a lot of my life, is that we were part of a resistance, so to speak, and so I think that's gonna...
I don't know about that because I think you see boomers and certainly young people getting apps on their cell phone that are what we call the single white female apps.
Right.
So it's the I'm buying a couch from the weird guy on Craigslist. If I'm not out of his apartment in 20 minutes, come and get me.
Right.
So there is a level of acceptance. I mean, we all agree the amount of privacy that we have given up in order to participate with the online community is really staggering. And I don't think that it's going to be introduced as a separate system that gets brought in and monitors you. I think it's going to be incremental, added onto the remote light and door lock controls that you have and thermostat controls. So I think that it's going to be part of a different type of system, but I think the same sort of passive check-in is going to take place, and I actually think people are going to be more comfortable with it. But I don't think it's going to be, okay kids, today we're buying a BeClose system, and you know, bring it on in. It's going to be, I'm going to add this app to my cell phone, I'm going to put one thing in my kitchen just so you know I got my coffee in the morning. It's going to be that. It's going to be a very different conversation.
Well, there'll be ovens with FaceTime on it, let's
Exactly.
face it.
Exactly.
Everywhere, there'll be eyeballs.
Exactly.
Real eyeballs, easy to monitor with visual bounce back.
Exactly. But I think in 15 years, everybody's going to have a sensor on their door to see whether the cleaning lady came on time. You know, we can now find out whether people are coming on time and working the hours they say they're going to work, and the vacation property, whether the real estate agent told you the truth about whether they were renting it or whether they're just hanging out there for the week.
From a business perspective, the traditional monitoring solution, you see the commercial on the lady's phone, and she can't get up, she presses the button. You know, they're marketed not necessarily for the demographic that's, you know, the product is intended for. So with your solution, how are you marketing it to the actual users? Because solutions, they're essentially marketing to the kids of
Right.
said parent that lives alone. You buy it for them, so, because you don't want your mom falling down. So how are you, what are you doing with your marketing so that it's addressing the actual demographic?
Actually, the panic buttons are more marketed to the elderly people.
Yeah.
It's, you don't want to be that pathetic person stuck on the floor, do you?
Yeah, I've fallen and I can't get up.
It's
Commercial is
very
aimed
fear-based.
at fearful women living alone.
And it's on the programs that they watch.
Right, I think what's interesting about it is it's 40-year-old technology and still only has about 10% penetration of the market. So if that marketing approach worked, 80% of old people would have it by now. You know, most people wear bike helmets.
So you're not necessarily doing that, how are you?
We're
how are you
not
marketing
going after the
people?
seniors so much. What we're doing primarily is working with home care providers, senior living facilities, senior services organizations, community organizations who help support seniors to live independently for as long as they want. And often they play a role, geriatric care managers, often they play a role within the family as a sort of.
So this would be something like in their, when they're going to these facilities, it's an additional option for them
That's
to
right.
review and to take a look at this.
That's right. Or a home care company that comes in and says, so-and-so needs 20 hours a week of driving and grocery shopping and light household tasks. You really need somebody else looking after them for the other 22 hours a day when they're alone.
Well, let's
Yeah,
go to our
let's get
last
Lloyd
speaker.